romance readers. I am Liz Donatelli. Welcome to Reader Seeks Romance, the #1 romance novel talk show on YouTube. Author Suzanne Park joins me to discuss her rom-com, The Do-Over. And Suzanne shares her reading list and her writing life in Quickies Q&A segment. Enjoy, and be sure to like and subscribe. Welcome back to Reader Seeks Romance, Suzanne.
Thank you for having me again. I'm excited to be here.
You previously appeared on the show in 2021 to discuss So We Meet Again with me and guest co-host Kelly Reynolds of Boobies and Newbies podcast. How have things changed for you since then?
Well, more bookstores are open. I'm going to more author events and meeting authors in real life. They're actually 3D people. Turns out they're not just online caricatures of people. It's been a lot better, I have to say. Not that it was all that horrible in 2021 because things were kind of slowly getting back to normal. But I do feel like as an author, it's nice to actually be able to see people and talk to booksellers and librarians. It's just like a different experience.
As you mentioned, now you can meet readers in person. Does that excite more than unnerve you?
Yes, it excites me. I was at a book festival and just even walking around with other authors, just meeting them for the first time, we all kind of swarm to the next, session we're all going to watch together, whatever. And then it's funny when readers will recognize, maybe wouldn't have recognized me by myself, but if I'm in this environment with other authors, they are like, oh, I know who that is. And then when I've done panels and in-person events in the last few months, I have had readers attend, and it just blows my mind because, if anything, you just have any person that debuted during the pandemic, we don't actually know what it's like to be an author, and if who is reading our book, you might get some comments online or you might get reviews, but you don't really truly know what a reader looks like and how excited they are until you see them in person and you have a conversation with them.
Congratulations on the release of The Do-Over.
Thank you.
I'd like to start with some praise. Suzanne Park is a hidden gem in the romance world, and The Do-Over is her best book yet. Christina Lauren, New York Times bestselling author. A fantastic, empowering, second chance romance that combines wit and charm with an always insightful commentary on imposter syndrome, anxiety, and the challenge of finding ourselves. Suzanne Park wrote a true gem. Ali Hazelwood, New York Times bestselling author, publishes weekly. Park's pitch perfect, comedic timing, and knack for creating heartstrings tugging moments makes this thoughtful romance really shine. This is a winner. Would you say your author goals are achieved after hearing all of that praise?
Yes. I've reached my full potential. I can retire now. Some people have these lofty goals, and honestly, my goals were very reasonable and achievable. It was like, I just want to have a thing to do during the day that will make money that is better than my corporate job. And if as long as I achieve that, then I know I made the right decision. And I still think I made the right decision. And so I know other friends are very tied to, what Hollywood thinks or what, New York Times thinks and whatever. And I guess I just had a different goal in mind. Mine was more about the long game of having a career that I can write books, hopefully for a long time with longevity. But yes, to have this praise from these people that I respect so much, and for the trade press, I just it's nice to be recognized for something that I am trying to achieve and trying to do. And, it actually seems to be working.
I noticed your social media post on Instagram with an excerpt from Ali Hazelwood.
Yes.
And then I saw, it was a cross stitch or needlepoint. I'm not familiar with the craft that is, but yes, please show. That is so awesome.
Yeah, I picked it up during the pandemic. I think I had in fourth grade done some projects.
Yeah.
But yeah, these were all during the pandemic when I had nothing else to do with my brain and hands. And then I'm trying to put this in the order that would make sense of like maybe how I actually started creating them. So there's the dumpster fire of 2020. Um, this was one of the later ones.
I
This is
like
kind
that.
of funny. I was not expecting to do this. And this is probably my favorite one. I need to frame this one.
I have not heard that before.
Me either. And I saw it and I had to get that kit. So I had a, as far as just having a productive
Mhm.
pandemic, I
Yeah.
did pick up a pastime. And so
That's
yeah,
good.
so the blurb, I thought it would be hilarious to turn it into a cross stitch piece. And
Yes.
so it was perfect because there was an excerpt from Allie Hazelwood's
Mhm.
blurb that fit very well within what I was trying to do. And I had a pattern and a kit from, like, I just pieced them together. So I was able to figure out how to do the embroidery, the flowers. And then I realized, wait, I could probably put whatever I want in the text because I think I'm just skilled enough to figure out how to do that part. And it worked out pretty well.
I am very impressed by your talent.
Thank you.
So, in The Do-Over, your main character, Lily Lee, is a best-selling author of motivational career self-help, who, while interviewing for her dream job, discovers that she is actually credits short of earning her college degree. When Lily returns to her alma mater to take a computer science class that she needs to graduate, she learns that the teaching assistant is her former college love, Jake Cho, and he looks good. Mm-hmm. Did you write The Do-Over to conquer your own fear of having to relive college?
Yes and no. So college was not the main stressor in my life. I actually didn't mind going to college. The stressor was actually this nightmare that I've had since high school, which is that I'm in my dream and I'm sitting at a desk with an exam in front of me for a class that I was enrolled for. I thought I dropped, but I've never attended any of the classes. And this is like a critical exam of whether I graduate or not. And talking to other people, it's a pretty common anxiety dream. And I kept having it during the pandemic. And I was trying to figure out why it had kind of spiked in terms of just frequency. So I started journaling and writing down post-it notes just to get the thoughts of what I was worried about and anxious about just out of my head onto paper, thinking that would help. And then at some point, I just had this aha moment, like, you always try to write books that are relevant, meaningful, but also just relatable. And when I had this dream, I was thinking, I know other people have had this dream. I've had this conversation with my girlfriends and with coworkers, and it's a very common dream. What would happen if I turned that somehow into a novel? And I just noodling on it, I came up with this concept of her going back to school because she finds out that she didn't actually graduate. And then, what I do like to do to my characters too is what else could go wrong. And then I thought, what would be worse than having shown up and then find out that your teaching assistant is your former boyfriend from college. Yeah. And that would be terrible. And then other bad things happen to her and, stakes get higher and there's a lot of conflict in the story as it develops. But those were the two main things, like having it stem from an actual nightmare that people have and how does she kind of cope with it knowing that her ex-boyfriend is her teaching assistant and could pass or fail her depending on how things go.
Oh yeah. Well, I have to say that you completely tapped into my worst nightmare. I graduated from college. Hopefully I graduated from college about 25 years ago. And to this day, I still have chaotic, horrible dreams about being back at college and having to take tests I didn't study for.
Yes.
Failing a class because I didn't know I had signed up for this class.
Mm-hmm.
And facing that fear of, how am I going to graduate? How am I going to do it again? How am I going to be able to sit through classes, study, do it again? And then me frustrated trying to explain to everybody in my dream, you don't understand. I've already graduated. You don't understand. I shouldn't be here. So when I, heard about the premise of the do-over, I was like, I have to read this, not only because I love Suzanne, but because maybe by reading this, I can end these nightmares.
Yeah. Did it work? Because
yes, I have not. I haven't had it. I
haven't had mine since I wrote the book. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I had to work through exactly all the things that took place in this book, and maybe I had to reread this book and edit it a million times. But it ended up helping that. I don't know what it was. But, so basically, if you have that dream, anybody watching this, and you need a cure, I have a solution, and I have proof, testimonial here.
Yes. It is true. It is true. And I could identify with Lily because she does reveal having had some mental health issues as a college senior. And that's when my own started to come to the forefront. So I feel as if on many levels, yes, I was able to work through some stuff through your wisdom, presented through Lily. Furthermore, Lily is this this motivational guru. And I feel like you are as well, because you wrote Lily. So you're also helping people with your romantic comedies. So I thought you should know that.
Thank you. I have had early readers who I don't know, I don't know them and have never really interacted with them. They'll just message me or email me saying they read the book and they were working through a tough time right now with their career or their, personal life and whatever. And this book was relatable and it's something about the timing being perfect of, somebody going through their own personal journey of, am I good enough? Like, why do I not feel like I'm achieving everything? Looking around at your peers. I do talk about all that and, imposter syndrome, anxiety, parental expectations. It's all in the book. And I try to kind of have the character work through it and, to the best of her abilities. And hopefully, when readers read it, they're satisfied with the ending and feel like they are more comforted knowing that there are other people going through the same thing.
Tell me about writing Lily and Jacob or Jake's love story. Why do they deserve a second chance?
Writing their second chance was harder than I had thought because you have to have, at least in my stories, I really ground it in reality, all of my stories. So while outlandish things can happen, because actually really outlandish things happen to me in real life. So when I tell stories about like, oh my God, this just happened, everyone's like, really? Like, how? And they do. And so I do ground my characters in reality. It's not like some fantasy romance, some like thing that just could rarely happen. So for them, having two people reconnect after so many years and still have kind of a chemistry, but then also have a reason why they were pulled apart, right, and whether they can overcome that. That was the tricky part because it actually changed as I wrote the story, whether it was just kind of a milder breakup. Because, there's people who break up just because either the chemistry's gone or they just, move on, or it's actually very minor on why some people break up versus an all out, like a huge issue. And a lot of second chance romances that I've read have these enormous things. And two that I've read recently are, there's a marriage proposal and then there's infidelity, all the stuff. And, I was thinking like as a college student, when you're 21, 22, what seems realistic? So the way I had set that up, I tried to make it as realistic as possible where two people, not necessarily just miscommunication, but it's like, your life experience isn't what, you don't understand what I'm going through right now. And people just being not very, what do you call it, mature either, because they are still learning how to be an adult. So I tried to make sure it was realistic for college age students to go through a breakup and them to still be very petty and hold grudges.
Mm-hmm.
And then whether they can get over it a few years later when they do encounter each other, and
Yes.
and him being really attractive, right?
Yes, yes. I thought it was perfectly executed. It was very believable because I was curious too, because it is revealed kind of bit by bit what happened. There's some flashbacks which are done
Mhm.
very well, and you learn kind of what happened. And I was like, yeah, like that. I could totally see that. Makes sense. It was, an issue of maturity and, paths going in different directions. And again, a parental expectation on both sides. So I thought it, made sense. And their reunion wasn't well like, oh God, I can't believe they got back. Though you totally could believe why they would get back together. And you were rooting for them.
Yeah.
So I really
Thank
did
you.
enjoy that. But I do have to ask,
Mhm.
at any point, had you considered writing an age gap romance between Lily and Ethan, the young classmate that she befriends? Because there's a lot of mention of, oh, he's cute, but
Mhm.
I'm not like that. I'm so much older than him. I'm 10 years older. Did you play with that? Did you like, maybe I could, or maybe even with her friend Mia, who would come and
Mhm.
visit? Like, did you think of having some romance between Ethan with either Lily or Mia? Did you play with that? Did you think of it?
I did think of it. I had it as like a potential nugget of like a kernel of an idea. I didn't go there only because I did want to focus the story the way I have it unfold. But I did want him to be a bit of eye candy too, because honestly, if you're in that environment and you are full, pretty much more than a part-time student and you're immersed in college life and you have all these people in their 20s around you would look and so
Oh,
she
yeah.
she has this guy that is in her group and they're friends. But yes, I think there could be potential for like a sequel or whatever with him in it, because I think he is a likable guy and he's
Yes.
attractive, and she could see how in another lifetime maybe,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yes. Two themes that you explore in both So We Meet Again and The Do Over are connecting through food, most prominently through Korean cuisine, and repairing the parent adult child relationship. In what ways do these themes serve the romance journeys that you write?
With food, I feel like both culturally, if it's Korean food, that is a connector among the people that I'm writing about. So whether it's connecting to the reader, but also connecting with the characters, just
Mhm.
interacting and cooking together. That's one thing, or sharing food and eating. That was something that I definitely wanted to reintroduce in this book. Maybe not as prominently because it's not a cooking show like it was in So We Meet
Yeah.
Again. But I mean, Beth was a huge baker, and there were a lot. It was still during the pandemic, so there was a lot of comfort food still put in there, and I think that was very important for the reader's sake and my own sanity to include these things as I was writing, so that I would find enjoyment and then the reader would also find enjoyment, and hopefully connected to kind of all the senses that come
Mhm.
with food. The parental relationship repairing, I feel like that is something that um, in the Asian American community, it's always discussed a lot in
Yeah.
people in sort of my generation, but people who are adults now, but lived with their parents growing up, and it was more of a a kind of probably not non-traditional upbringing compared to their American counterparts. And so some of it is kind of wish fulfillment, where you wish that the parents would come around. I actually just had this conversation with a reader today
Really?
that had just finished the do-over and said like, oh, I now that I'm getting older, I just wish my parents would relax a little bit. So they're still very, meddling and, trying to
Yeah.
get involved and have a lot to say about how this person is raising their children and that sort of thing. And so I think that what I do like to do is, because it has humor to it, um, present sort of the repairing of a relationship in a way that is not a complete fantasy either, but has a touch of humor to it, so that it might, although it's not a perfect, sense of closure,
Right.
that you see the humor in how they resolve it, and that it's memorable, but also kind of brings the reader along, and then they're satisfied with how that came together. And even though, again, it's not resolved completely, there's some headway made. And I don't think that it's either not done or it's completely like done in a fairy tale way.
Right.
Many of the times I've seen in fiction, and I wanted to kind of strike a balance of, let's make it kind of realistic, because there's no way, let's say, certain types of personalities would just admit they're wrong, right? They would not say the words, "I'm sorry, I was wrong all of these years. You shouldn't have, I shouldn't have been so hard on you." Those words would
Yeah.
never come out. But there might be little things that are done, and gestures that, or things that are said, but they're not so on point, that mean something similar.
If you had to relive your college days knowing what you know now, what's the first thing that you would change?
Oh, I would change how I had submitted my form for first year roommate situation.
Oh, do tell.
Oh, well, I think I should have just sort of rolled the dice more. I think because my parents were sort of involved with everything. It was like, of all of the college, I was on the only all girls hallway, like in the entire school. Like they were like, we want you to be only around girls so you can study harder and you won't be dating, like it just literally like changed how my college experience started. And I didn't really think about it, because I was like, I don't care, that's what I'm thinking. And then I show up and it's just like all these people with these parents and all the same thing. So yeah, I made such wonderful friends on my dorm room floor, still friends with a lot of them. But it's so bizarre that was like, you end up like having a completely different college experience than other people who had co-ed floors, or just a different setup altogether. So it's a very specific thing, but I remember it being like something I was like, I don't know if that was the like, what I would have done, in the future, or what I would do for my own daughter. It was it changed the experience. So
yeah, as far as being on an all girls floor, do you feel in retrospect that you did get more studying done because it wasn't co-ed?
no, I don't think so, because I was so happy to be away from home that I think I just was like, woo, and watch TV and hung out with friends and went out. And so it just was not, it was just freedom. And so I don't think it was necessarily who it was around. It was just an odd situation to be like only around like 60 other people, and it's almost like a commune within a university, which made no sense, like on the grand scheme of things, that it would be just one floor in one building, and that's it.
So you dedicate the do-over to those still finding their way. Do you count yourself among them?
Yes, I do. This dedication was harder to figure out what I wanted to write and dedicate to, because I know the book has a certain, has a point to it that my other books don't necessarily have. Like, I don't know if it's like life lessons or life journey commentary, but for me, I was in corporate America forever and, have an MBA, all these choices that I've made up to the point of becoming an author or writer and then an author, that I feel like I'm just getting started, to be honest. And so I feel like that should be encouraging for a lot of people that, I'm kind of still working through, like, how do I, do things? And so this year, 2023 alone, like I got my first byline in Southern Living. I was able to, get in Real Simple magazine. These things, like, are life achievements. And it's not like I, decided to become a writer right out of college. So I feel like hopefully when people read the book and are encouraged, I think it's also might be in my author's note or in the acknowledgments where I mentioned that, like, I, have my own journey that, I find this windy path to ending up where I am now. But I'm happy where I am now. I'm glad I ended up here. And I don't think I could have done it without my previous life experiences of saying, nope, I don't want to do that. Opening up door number 2, number 4, and number 100 and going, no, we'll just shut that door too.
Right.
Yeah. So I do think I'm in the right place. I think I'm doing what I'm meant to do. And now hopefully when people read it, and this book is dedicated to those who are still figuring it out and know that it's never too late.
What are you currently reading?
I am currently reading, let's see, I have audiobooks and Kindle books and some advanced reader copies of things that I'm reading. So I would say what I have listened to recently is The Portrait Thief by Grace Lee. I had read half of her book and then switched to audiobook just because I needed to do some exercise and run errands and drive a lot. And it was just great to hear. It's a heist, an art heist, but it also touches, so it's fast paced and really interesting, but it also touches on certain themes of identity and belonging, as well as colonialism. And you do a lot of thinking, and her prose is just on point. Other things that I've read or I'm reading, I'm reading The Writer's Retreat by Julia Bartz. And so I'm halfway through that. No spoilers, but it definitely is funny to read a book about writers, aspiring authors at a retreat. And I know things are going to go wrong, and she's setting it up perfectly for that. So I'm excited.
So what's the last book you read?
I finished a arc of The Boy You Always Wanted. It's a YA book that is comedic, but also a huge coming of age component to it, about a teenager who finds out that her grandfather is soon to pass away, and she wants to fill his last wish of having a male heir. So she ends up talking her friend into being sort of ceremonially adopted to be the male heir of the family. So it's just very comedic and funny, the setup of that. And then, of course, in the end, there may be a love interest involved with that said heir and the main character. So it's a nice little story. And that's by Michelle Kwok.
Which book is on your to be read pile?
I want to read Jane Peck's The Verifiers. I actually don't know what it's about. I just asked a friend if she had a book recommendation of books that I would like, and she recommended that particular book. So I think that it's supposed to be a funny mystery with Asian American characters. So I'm very excited about reading that book. There's a book called Reprieve that is also, I just downloaded it. It's a more literary fiction, but it takes place, it's like a haunted escape room. I'm not exactly sure, but it's
intriguing.
I know. I was like, it sounds right up my alley. So I will see how that goes, but that's something that I have to return in 21 days. So so we'll see how it goes. I'm a very slow reader, so it will be interesting to see if I could finish it in that period of time. Most people, like when you talk to people on Bookstagram or people who have these good read challenges, they read like several books a week, if not several a day. And it takes me a week to read fast a book that I'm like even enjoying. So
Right.
I don't know how people do it. And I'm not, I do try to skim sometimes, but it still doesn't help the way I need it to. So no
I
idea.
hear you. I hear you. Which book have you reread more than once?
I had just got this question asked by
Oh,
somebody recently, and I was trying to think if there was any book that I have reread. I don't typically reread books, to be honest. But the one that I have read more than one time, and it's sort of against my will, is The Great Gatsby. And for whatever reason, in college I had to read. In high school I read it, and then in
mhm.
college it was for coursework. And then whatever reason in business school, they made me read it again. And I was like, first of all, why is this book so important that three different institutions that are unrelated to each other find it critically needed to be like part of the repertoire? But I especially don't understand like why I can never remember it. So I have to reread it, and then I'm like, oh, that happens. And, I complete amnesia. I don't remember anything, so I do have
Yeah.
to reread it. It's not like I have this memory of like, oh, the third time. Of course, I remember every detail. Like every time I read it, it's a brand new. Like, oh, I forgot that this person's named Daisy or what. It's just so very. It's
Right.
yeah, it's just funny that that's just a book that I have reread, and it's probably not because I find it terribly enjoying. I also have read On Writing by Stephen King more than once. I don't know
Oh,
anything
okay.
about it, and it was because one was read, and then the other one I listened to an audiobook.
Which is easier, writing the first draft or editing it?
Editing it. I have no hesitation with that. I dislike drafting so much that it just is like, it's just so painful. I don't know why. Some people can draft fast. Maybe it gets back to the whole like,
Mhm.
I don't do a lot of things very quickly. So
Okay.
it takes me a while to write. It seems like I'm a fast writer overall because some people are like, oh, you are able to have pretty decent throughput, or, you can get to, you know, publish a book every year, or around that time frame.
Mhm.
And it's actually that I had to sit down a long time per day to get those words out. It's not
Yeah.
like, oh, I bang it out in 30 minutes and I've got like my word count. It's a good 4+ hours, of,
Right. Yeah.
of drafting. So I treat it as a job. So when I finish the draft, I'm always very happy. That's like the best moment, maybe even before turning in the book to my editor, because it's such a relief. And my drafts are always super short compared to where they need to be. And I have to add everything in the edit stage. But the edit stage to me is easier, I think, because by then I already know what the story is. And then I'm just adding either color or description, or adding in scenes that I think are needed. And to me,
Okay.
that's just easier uh, to do than to start from scratch.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. Which is a better compliment from a reader? You write compelling protagonists, or you write compelling conflict?
Oh, this is tough. Um, I think protagonists. I think actually the Publisher Weekly quote that you had mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
um in Publisher Weekly, the Publishers Weekly seems to closely examine my use of characterization and character development more than some of the other trade publications. They've mentioned it more than once. And I think uh, for me, when I get that compliment, it truly means I can do something that other people can't. I think people could just build conflict by just suggesting things and getting ideas from movies or whatever, but I think it's really hard to build a compelling protagonist, um, unless you are skilled. I think
Right.
that's just my
Yeah.
gut feeling. It would be hard to have somebody that you're rooting for or hate. That's like just somebody very
Yeah.
convincing as a character. I would love for them to have strong feelings and emotions toward the character, and the conflict. That'd be great too. But I think you can either dial that up or dial it down.
Mhm.
it's harder to do the character.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you a pantser, a plotter, or a plantser, which is in between?
Yes, there's like this in between a plantser and plotster. And I don't know the difference actually, but I've heard both. I used to be a pantser, 100%. I'm definitely not a plotter because I see people with index cards and 20-page outlines, and that is also not me.
Okay.
But what I have learned over time is if I know where the story is going, it makes it easier to write. And so it doesn't matter that I have all the details, but as long as I know the milestones and the kind of the important key turning points of the story, I'm in good shape. Then I know where it needs to go. If I know the beginning, ending, middle, but also know the climax, the inciting incident, all the like key things,
Yeah.
I can get the story out of my head and onto paper. And the more details I have in like a quasi synopsis, the better my story is, more streamlined, and it's sort of easier to work from.
Right.
So I have learned that over time. Will I ever get to the point of being a plotter? Probably not, unless I switch genres. I have toyed with switching genres, and if that's the case, I'd probably be more of an outliner.
Ah, so which genre have you been toying with?
Well, I want to keep comedy and humor.
Okay.
So if I switch, I definitely want it to be a comedic story.
Okay.
But I have toyed with mystery or thriller.
Ah,
Yeah, because I think there are a lot of those that are emerging, but I think I could do something that might not have been seen before.
well, that's intriguing. Ooh.
I haven't written this thing, but I've been noodling with my agent and
Yeah.
talking to a few people.
Okay.
So I have an idea. I just need to kind of start on it.
Okay. Now, if you were to move forward with a comedic mystery, would there be a strong romantic element or not so much?
I don't think so because I plan to do an ensemble. So
Gotcha.
it would be
Okay.
hard. I
Okay.
mean, I could see if it would work, but to me, unless it's a first person or, one
Hmm.
singular view, it would be hard, I think.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well,
But this is all, evolving and changing. So
yes.
who knows?
Which is more difficult for you to write? The opening line of a novel or the very last line?
Opening line. This next book that I just turned in, after the do-over, will be coming out next year. It took me a long time to get the first 50 pages right. And it all started from that first chapter, first line, first everything, just not starting in the right place. So I never seem to, I'd say 50% of the time, I start and end up putting it in a different place and a different starting point, either due to the editor or just me having a gut feeling that where I started the story isn't where it needs to be. But when I write my ending, I kind of know where the story is going to go. And even if I know it's just kind of a line that's a placeholder, I know like how it needs to end. And I've never had an issue with kind of getting to the end, once I know I'm on that final chapter.
Okay. Which is easier for you to write, the book dedication or the acknowledgments?
Wow. For this book, it was hard to figure out the dedication, but the dedication is only a short line or two. So acknowledgments for me, they end up taking, 2 to 3 pages. And I think this real fear is leaving someone out. That's every author's fear, is like somebody very important to the process, just because of the timing of when you need to write it. Sometimes it's a last minute thing because it's after the book is due and it's after the first copy edits. Then you have to submit it. And then sometimes you only get one pass at fixing it. And so there was one where I have a friend that she's been very integral in helping me get the Korean dialect exactly right for this present day, college student, for example. Like it has to all be for me, very accurate and timely, and everything to be, right, because it's not like how Korean people would speak Korean, 5 10 years ago or 20 years ago, because some of the terminology might be different and new technology has come in and some words are more have more of a Western influence, for example, but there's it's somehow made it into the vernacular. So I almost forgot her, even though like I talked to her a few times during the process. It was just early in the process. And so that, and then I added her because I remembered. So when I added her, I was like, do you have room? Because the other thing is the way, by the time it gets to this stage of past pages, which is flowing into layout, you don't have too much room to make adjustments because it will flow onto the next page, or it will, some sort of thing like that, where it might make the paragraph look different. And I was like, can you put in this person's name and this person and this person? And you just hope it doesn't mess up the alignment.
Right. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of stress.
Yeah, that sounds stressful. It does.
I mean, a logical person would keep notes along the way and know that this happens with every book and just go, you know what, it's that time, so you might as well take notes and open up your Google Doc and have all the names there. But that never happens for me.
Well, that's because you're a pantser, that's why. Last question. And you kind of alluded to a novel coming out next year. What are you currently working on?
Okay, so the book coming out next year, I don't know if I have a title yet. Right now it's called One Last Word. It might change. Okay. And I also can't divulge too much because I don't know a lot what will stay and what will not.
Okay.
Stay. But I can tell you that it is the adult version of To All the Boys I've Loved Before.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Okay. That is exciting.
It's like, what could go wrong for an adult person in their 30s, loosely inspired by To All the Boys I've Loved Before? So there's some fake dating. There is love interest, obviously, and things that go awry when it follows the same structure as To All the Boys, but it's not so mapping to the story completely. Otherwise it'd be like a teenager story, right? So it has to have like an adult spin to it. So that will be the tricky part that my editor and I have to figure out, is like, how do we give the nod to All the Boys, but also have it be, because it's a completely original work. It's just that if you read it, you'll be like, oh, this seems like the adult version of To All the Boys I've Loved Before.
Well, I look forward to having you back on Reader Seeks Romance next year to discuss this intriguing romantic comedy that you have teased here only on Reader Seeks Romance.
Nobody has ever asked me that recently because I just turned it in. So you are the first.
Oh, wow. Exclusive. Suzanne, you are a delight. Thank you for joining me here on Reader Seeks Romance.
I love being on your show. It's always so much fun. And I love your editing. It's like,
thank you.
I don't think enough people appreciate the art of editing video, and you do it in such a fun way.
Thank you for noticing and appreciating.